people, just so everyone knows who is part of the team that has been meeting tirelessly to work on these plans. The first person that I will introduce is Miss Chelsea Bird. Most of you know her. Chelsea, say hi.
Hello.
Chelsea is our 3rd through 5th assistant principal, and she is manning the keyboard tonight. We also have Frances Meisenet. She is going to be doing interpreting. So do you have that all set up, Mrs. Bird?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so you should see, let me see, at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, there is you have to hover over it. There's a little world and it says interpretation. Click on that. And if you choose Spanish, then it will take you to Frances Meisenet and she will be translating for you. And we tried to get a Russian translator tonight, but we did not succeed. So what we will do is if we have a request for Russian translation, we will translate the video for anyone who needs it. Okay, Miss Chen Hong, please say hi. You may have to unmute her, Chelsea.
I just did. Sorry. Sorry, Chen. Sorry, Miss Hong. Okay.
She's still muted. Oh, there she is.
Oh.
Hello, everyone.
All right, there she is. Ms. Hong is our middle school assistant principal. So these ladies have been hard at work with me over the last 2 months. We've also had some really great help from Miss Adrienne Doherty. Adrienne, can you wave, and Chelsea, can you unmute her so she can say hi? Adrienne Doherty is our instructional coach. She's going to be focused on literacy this year, but she brings a lot of experience to our school. She's been an assistant principal and a principal and has worked at every single GVA, basically. So have you found her yet?
Yep.
All right, Miss Doherty, say hi. No luck?
It won't.
Oh, no, there we go.
There we go.
Thanks for joining.
We also have Miss Katie Franklin. I believe she is on the call. Katie. Katie is our middle school instructional coach, and she has been working with us as well. She's been on our return to school committees, and she is a great asset as well. Can you unmute her? Say hi, Miss Franklin.
Sorry, I can't find her.
Okay, that's fine. We can come back to her if you find her. And then we have Kate Eggleston. She is our special education department chair. She will be monitoring the chat box tonight. So if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat box, and she will be monitoring them and interrupting me as she sees fit. So say hi, Miss Eggleston.
Hi, everyone.
And then we also have our board president, Mr. Ray Sullivan. As you know, we are a charter school and we have a governing board that helps with decision-making and governance of our school. So Mr. Sullivan, please say hi.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
And Mr. Sullivan is my co-host tonight. I am making him help me. So be sure to ask him really tough questions. All right, let's get started. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so just a few things that I would request for this meeting. Please stay muted unless you're speaking. I think that you're not able to unmute yourself, so that shouldn't be a problem. If you have questions, type them into the chat box. As I said, we have Spanish interpretation available. And the meeting is also being recorded, so it will be posted on our website. Next slide. This is just a little bit of instruction on how to ask a question via Zoom chat. You hover over the bottom bar of your screen and type in your question. If you want to send it directly to Kate Eggleston, you can, or you can send it to everyone. It doesn't matter. As you guys all saw, I tried to send one to Chelsea and I sent it to everyone, but luckily it wasn't anything rude. All right, next slide. All right, so why are we here? the point tonight is for us to talk about the draft plan that we have created. And this plan has 22 pages of detail that does not cover everything by any means, but it is a lot of information, and it was sent out on Monday in our school newsletter. So I hope that everyone had a chance to read through it and memorize it, because it's really important that you know every single detail. I'm just joking, because we even don't know the details. Things change daily, so keep in mind that that is a draft, and this meeting tonight is a chance for us to go over it and for you guys to give us feedback. So the two options in our draft are 100% in-person learning with extreme safety precautions, or a 100% remote learning program. And these are the two options that we have given families to choose in this particular plan. And this plan also includes a delayed start date and a rolling start date, but all those details are in the plan. Next slide. So the 100% remote program we are branding as GVA virtual. This is 100% remote, and it's a mix of synchronous and asynchronous learning. And that means it's live interaction with the teacher virtually, and it's recorded lessons. So it's a combination of the two. A lot of feedback that we received from parents in spring was that the interaction with the teacher was very important to their student. So we are doing our best to include as much of that as possible in GVA virtual. Then the 100% in-person option includes all of these safety precautions and much, much more. But some of the highlights: cohorts that do not interact. This means that students stay with the same group of kids all day long. This is true for K through 8. The only difference, the only time that would potentially be different is in middle school, students will travel together for math, science, English, and social studies, but then they may split up for their language class. But that would not introduce new students. It would just be less students. So the Russian students would go to the Russian classes and Mandarin, etc. And then for the younger kids, that means you have your class and you travel with your class. So if your English class is the same kids that you go to Spanish class with, and you don't actually go anywhere, you stay in the classroom. So the teachers travel. The plan also includes face masks for children that are 11 years and up, which includes staff. We have installed a thermal temperature reader that will read the temperature for all students and staff and anyone who enters the building. It's actually up and running as we speak. We ordered hand washing stations, one for every single K through 3 classroom, and then enough for the 4th, 5th, and middle school hallways to have about 1 per 2 classrooms. So not quite 1 per classroom for 4th, 5th, and middle school, but close. A staggered lunch and recess that prevents the cohort interaction. So this will be a lot of dividing up of the parking lot, the playground, so that students can eat outside. Some students can eat in the cafeteria. There will be a rotation. And it kind of depends on the grade. So that whole bit will be very organized, and the students will not be interacting with other cohorts during that time. We've changed our breakfast and lunch service to be individually wrapped food, just to minimize that risk for contamination. Strict protocols for any suspected health risks. So this is a big question that a lot of our families have, and that I've gotten from staff as well. Sorry, I get distracted by the chats. I'm going to come back to that question about the cohorts. So suspected health risks mean a student has a fever, maybe was exposed to COVID, maybe their mom was exposed to COVID. There are a million different scenarios that we could say, what if, what if, what if. What it comes down to is we have partnered with Children's Hospital of Colorado. They are our new nurse contracted nurse, and we will be working with them along with Tri-County Health to make decisions about when a cohort needs to be quarantined, when just a student may need to be quarantined, maybe, a student and their siblings. There are a million different scenarios. We can't sit and list every single scenario, but we can tell you that we will follow what Tri-County Health tells us to do, and if we don't follow what Tri-County Health tells us to do, it will be because we're erring on the side of safety. So if Tri-County Health says, well, you could quarantine that cohort, or you could just quarantine those kids at the table, my choice is going to be quarantine everyone. So the likelihood of a quarantine for any student is high, because I'm going to be very liberal with my quarantining desires and and actions. So that one is a tough one to just overall give an overall general answer to, but the main thing is that we have these partners who are doctors, health experts, that will be making the decisions for us, essentially. We've upped our daily sanitation of the building by a lot. So we've hired a person that will just be the sanitizer person that works full time. This person will be cleaning the bathrooms, will be cleaning door handles all day long. So everything will be cleaned multiple times a day. We've done some air filtration modifications and upgrades to our HVAC system to incorporate more outdoor air and get air circulating better in the building. We are not going to allow students to share school supplies or really any community supplies in the classroom. And then a social distancing policy, which I can't see that bottom part now. A social distancing policy for
Classrooms and common areas.
classrooms and common areas. So right now, if you walk in the building, there are stickers all over the floor. The halls are divided into two-way runways, if you will. And we will be expecting students and adults to be following all social distancing protocols that are possible. So let me go back to the cohort question. And this actually answers another question later on, but how many are in a cohort? So as it stands right now, many parents have said, why are you doing cohorts of 30? Why are you doing cohorts of 25? Where did you get that number? So what we have been told by our health partners, Tri-County and Children's Hospital, is that the number in the cohort is less important than the actual keeping the cohort together. But with that said, a caveat of all that is, right now, all of our elementary classes are sitting at 23 students or less. There is one middle school class that is a little bit more than that. But we're saying 30 because if there are students who want to return from virtual learning at some point, which we can talk about that as well, we need to have space for them. And so we're allotting there could someday be up to 25, 27 students in a classroom. But right now, with the way things stand, we've got classes that are anywhere from 8 students to 23. So I just want to clarify that. So Kate, do you have any questions that are common questions that maybe we could address quickly?
Okay, sorry. Yes, there are several questions. Some are specific to grade level, so I will just chat those people,
Okay.
and then they can jump in and interrupt. Are there designated virtual teachers, or are the grade level teachers doing both full in-person and virtual students?
That's a great question. As it stands in this draft, no, the teachers will be either an in-person teacher or a virtual teacher. They will not be doing both. We do not want to add that stress to our teachers. Any other major
Yep.
question.
Do all day face masks for 11 and up last indefinitely, or are we just following the governor's mask order until it's lifted?
That's a good question. I think that's something that we could potentially reevaluate. Ray, do you want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, so the way that we're approaching things like mask orders is we're going to take the guidance, obviously, from the mandates from Tri-County and what the governor has said right now. And we're going to continue to evaluate data and the trends. Part of the reason why schools are looking at delayed starts and they're looking at going remote early, which incidentally we are, is the fact that the COVID situation is still changing. So the trends are going upwards. So what we'll do when we're evaluating whether we want to keep face masks on, people in the building, staff and students, is what's the data showing us? What's the recommendations we're getting? So at this point, we're following the guidance and the regulation. But at some point, we may be getting some guidance from our healthcare professionals it might be acceptable to allow masks off in a classroom. So we'll continue to evaluate that as we keep going on.
The semester goes well into the winter. How can lunch be expected to be outside?
That is a good question. So a lot of it will be, when that comes about, it will be in the classrooms.
Will there be a la carte food if my kid wants extra food, and will having snacks from home be allowed?
So a la carte food, we won't be doing the a la carte food. Only if you buy a lunch, you buy a lunch, you buy a breakfast, you buy a breakfast. So there won't be extra snacks. But yes, snacks from home will be allowed. Shared food is absolutely not allowed. But yes, you can bring snacks just for your child.
And this goes off of the lunch one. If lunch is moved indoors or not, are the times going to be wacky to accommodate the number of kids, like a 9 lunch and a 2 lunch, for example?
No, right now, the lunches are essentially the same time that they were last year.
But the reason we're doing that is because they're going to the classroom. So the kids are not necessarily all going to go to the cafeteria.
Right.
So they're going to stay in their cohort to have lunch. So we can, basically the delay will be getting the lunches to the rooms.
Right, and we have a system in place for doing that prevents cohort interaction. So things will take longer, no doubt, but they will be separated. Kate, anything else?
Yeah, there's about 6 more. You want me to keep going?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Do you foresee a major change in this plan if Adams 12 should pass their current proposed plan?
We're going to address that later in the presentation.
Okay. Even though the cohorts are just one class, how do you account for kids in those cohorts who have multiple siblings? Would you quarantine all siblings class if there was an exposure?
Potentially, yes. Depending on the situation, yes.
How does quarantine affect allotted number of absences?
That's a good question. That's another thing that we will have to add to our attendance policy. But the thought is, so let's say, for example, Mrs. Brown, not to put you on the spot, Mrs. Brown, I can just see your face. Let's say, someone in her class is positive. They've all been together. The likelihood is that her cohort will quarantine for 14 days. She will quarantine for 14 days. Probably her Spanish immersion equivalent will have to quarantine, and potentially her students as well. Well, they're the same students. So, sorry, they're the same students, but, and then everyone will go to remote learning with Mrs. Brown and her Spanish immersion partner. So the students would be learning at home with Mrs. Brown, so they would not be absent. Now, if a child is actually sick, then that's a different story, and we don't have the actual attendance policy set in stone yet, but there would be no situation in which we would have an issue with a child that took 14 days off because they had coronavirus. So we would accommodate that, absolutely. Any other?
This kind of follows that. If a cohort is quarantined, will those students then come back to in-person instruction once their quarantine is over?
Yes, at some point. And the only way that they would come back is if Tri-County Health approved them to come back. So what they do exactly to improve it, I'm not entirely sure, approve it, but they will be the ones that will make those decisions. Should we keep going and see if I
Yeah,
cover?
because
Okay.
the questions keep coming. So why don't we keep going and see if we cover stuff?
Okay. All right. So so why no hybrid option? We've had some parents ask this question. And there are a lot of different types of hybrids as well. So we can talk about all, 10 different hybrid options, but I can tell you that right now, what we have focused on is trying to get the building ready for kids to come and trying to prepare remote learning for those that choose to do it as best as possible. And we have not spent as much time working on a hybrid option. Is that possible in the future? Absolutely. But some of the reasons that we've chosen to kind of not pay as much attention or not focus on that as much is that it likely is double work for teachers, or we would have to double the teaching staff. It would not reduce overall exposure for teachers to students. They would still see the same amount of students. It would just be different. It would be fewer days, right? But they would still see the same number of students. And then when you have these hybrid programs, you have days when students are in school and days that they're remote. And parents who are working have to find childcare for their students, for their children on remote days, which likely will result in them mixing with other students that are perhaps not even GVA students, and just expand the cohort mixing, if you will. The hybrid model doesn't necessarily help out working parents. It can be very tricky, and if then does that, et cetera, et cetera. And having a remote teacher with students in a classroom will require additional staff for classroom management. So for example, if we had a teacher at home that was teaching remotely, and we brought in certain students to watch the teacher from school so that their parents could go to work, we're still exposing students to a staff member. So it's either a teacher or a staff member that is monitoring those students. Next slide. These are just a few of the stakeholders that were involved in kind of coming up with this plan. We started meeting in June. It was, we invited parents, teachers, and staff to join we had 3 different committees, and we met weekly and discussed various possibilities and ideas. The other people that are, like I said, that are giving us a lot of information are Tri-County Health, Children's Hospital. We're going off of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention advice for reopening of schools, and then the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Next slide. So today's update, you may have seen that Adams 12 is probably currently in a board meeting presenting Superintendent Godowski's proposed plan for Adams 12. And that plan includes starting remote on August 27th and until September 25th at least. And then, is my connection breaking up? No? Okay, someone said that. And then they were going to reevaluate what to do in mid-September. We don't know if that has been approved by the board yet, but since we are in Adams 12 geographic district, it's something we're definitely considering and thinking about. Many of you may know that Denver Public Schools announced today that they are also extending their fully remote program for all students until October. Jeffco is doing something similar. So with that, we decided that we should revisit our proposal to have a 100% in-person option. And so one of the data points that we wanted to get was how staff were feeling about the two options. And we gave them a survey that said, if you were to choose, if you had to make the decision for our school, not necessarily for you, but for our school, would you choose remote or would you choose 100% in person? And you can see the numbers there are 40% of staff think that GVA North Glen should return in person, and 60% feel that we should start the year remote. Next slide. Okay, so these are a few more of the questions. Chelsea, we can see everything you're doing, just so you know.
Sorry. I'm trying not to. This is tricky. Okay.
Why cohorts up to 30? We discussed that. It's not really cohorts up to 30, but it's possible at some point in the year. Middle school start time change. There was a question about that. If you may remember, in years past, the middle school has started at 7:45 and elementary at 8. In an effort to provide childcare for families that have students that are in middle school and elementary school, the middle school students that had siblings queued up in the cafeteria in the morning, and those students waited there to be released to class after their middle school siblings went to class. It ended up being almost more students than we could actually legally have in the cafeteria. So it became a capacity issue last year, but with social distancing, there's just no possible way that we could actually keep that, that system going. The other thing is that one of the reasons that we started middle school at 7:45 several years ago is because of instructional hours in the day. We are required to have so many instructional hours. Middle school is required to have more than elementary, and we had to add some time in because you cannot count passing periods as instructional time. So middle school had 15 minutes of passing periods over the last 5 years, I believe it's been. And so if the students are just staying in the same class, there will be no more passing periods, so we can remove that extra 15 minutes. And the thought is that we will have more students potentially trying to come into the building at once, but we are prepared for what that would look like outside and how we will deal with that traffic, both foot traffic and car traffic. And it will require parents and students to socially distance and stand on stickers and wait outside in an orderly fashion. So it will be our plan that we release on Monday definitely takes all of that into consideration. I've had a lot of questions. Why are we not requiring staff and students to be tested for COVID-19? This is actually not something we can legally do. It's a violation of HIPAA laws and privacy, and unfortunately we cannot require that a student be tested before they return or before they show up on the first day. What will trigger a student or cohort to go into quarantine? I kind of addressed that earlier. What happens if the pandemic gets worse or there's much higher risk of infection? Then we would reevaluate. We were always going to be reevaluating the plan. Has GVA been considering any further start date delays or starting 100% remote for a period of time? Yes, we are talking about doing that now that Adams 12 has released their plan. And then will GVA consider some CDC guidelines such as staggered arrivals? Right now, we're not considering that because we have other things in place that will solve those issues. If it became an issue, then we would consider staggered arrivals. Phew, okay. So what I would like to do is maybe Kate, if you could parcel out some of those chats, and I'll start on the first couple, and then I might punt it over to Mr. Sullivan and see if he wants to participate in some of this. So Kate, shoot me a question.
Thank you. Okay, let me just back up. We are on Amanda. Okay. Within their cohort, will they have to maintain social distancing within the classroom? How much freedom of movement will they have within their classroom?
So the hope and expectation is that they will try their best to maintain social distance to the best of their ability. The teachers are not going to be social distancing police and measuring how far kids are from each other. It's going to be a trial and error type thing. Students are going to make mistakes, right? 5-year-olds will not remember to stay 6 feet apart from each other, 3 feet apart from each other. So are we gonna make them sit at a desk all day long and never move? No, but are we going to try to explain to them that they need to keep social distance from their friends? Yes. So we're not doing any extremes, right? We're not gonna make the kids be glued to a seat, but we're also not gonna let it be a free-for-all.
Any idea at this point what the percentage of the usual student body is planning to come face-to-face?
It changes daily. Parents change their minds constantly, but it's anywhere between 20% and I would say 30% that are considering remote.
And I'll jump in here. As the COVID situation has changed, we're seeing that parents are, rethinking, an early decision. Maybe they wanted to have their child, in person. So as the situation has changed with the COVID, we've had an uptick in cases. We're seeing that parents are also, they're thinking through that they may not want to bring their kids in, at least until they see the numbers going down again.
Will the virtual teachers for our kids be specifically GVA-N teachers, or could they be GVA Anywhere teachers?
It could be GVA Anywhere teachers in this particular plan. It could be any teacher from any GVA.
Will 11 and under wear masks in common areas?
Yes.
Will children have assigned seating in class?
Yes.
What is the healthy distance between students?
So what we have read, and I believe this was the CDC guidelines, said that 3 feet between students is a acceptable distance for a comprehensive return to school plan.
I think we already went over this. We can just kind of reiterate. If a class gets quarantined, will they immediately join the virtual program, or will they go virtual with their teacher, or will they do nothing?
They will go virtual with their teacher.
Question about non-COVID flu season. Typically, parents send kids to school with cold symptoms, runny nose and/or cough. These are also COVID symptoms. Are children with mild cold symptoms, will they be allowed to attend?
I think probably we will let Tri-County Health decide that for us. So it'll depend on the symptom.
Right.
Will there be on-site COVID testing or some official regular testing protocol?
No, not at this time. There's no plans for that.
What are the rules or expectations exist, or for kids' grades, academic performance, what are state rules?
So what it sounds like the question is kind of about what are the state expectations for academic performance and maybe attendance, and they're much more strict than they were in March. So the expectation is that students be learning. Now, exactly what that looks like from the state, there has not been a lot of guidance or information released. Ray, do you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, it's like Nicole said, the expectation is that either an in-person or virtual learning is solid learning. From a school standpoint, part of our mission is we want to do excellent academics. So that's part of our mission, and that's part of our goal. So we're setting that expectation that we're going to try and deliver the highest quality, and kids move forward in their academics. We don't want to stay stagnant or lose ground like we might have done in the spring. So our expectation internally is that we're going to advance with the academics. We're going to do our best to catch the kids up if they're behind, and we're also going to do our best to get them to the next level and maintain our academic excellence. As far as the state is saying, though, there's still some talk about whether they're going to give some waivers to us for number of days that we have to be in contact. We don't have any guidance yet about what the spring assessments are going to be. So we still don't have a lot of the answers from the state of how some of this is going to work. So as Principal Caldwell said, or Wetzel, gosh, I forgot to use, this is Mrs. Wetzel.
You're forgiven.
Yeah, so as she mentioned, we're going to adapt. We're going to be getting this data. Our school district, which is the Colorado Charter School Institute, is giving us guidance. So we're going to be listening to that and adjusting as we can. And if you hear a lot of we don't have an answer because we're going to have to adjust, that's actually a really, that's a real situation we're in. No one's given us answers. No one's giving us, solid things. Here's the 10 things you need to do to make your school successful. So a lot of this is we've got to, take the best advice from our specialists that we've brought in and make the best judgments that we can. And if we see something not working, we've got a great team and we'll make changes and we'll make adjustments. And it may be frustrating, for folks that want to know what the plan is and be able to rely on that. But in this situation, we're all pioneers in a covered wagon, and we're going into this great unknown about how to do school in a pandemic. And so we're gonna do our best is really what I'm saying. But knowing that there will likely have to be some things through the season goes on, the year goes.
Was it just my end or was it everyone's end?
Yeah, it was a little bit break.
bit.
Yeah.
Just towards the end, though. I think you got your point across, Ray. Hey,
Okay.
Miss Bird, can you take the waiting room function off the meeting so that people can just come in? Oh, excuse me. Okay, next question.
Okay. Do the kids who turn 11 during the year then switch to masks all day while their classmates who are still 10 do not?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm going to write that down.
I kind of tend to think it'll be based on kind of their class. I mean, if you're in a 5th grade class and most of your classmates are 10 years old, I think it's probably going to be one of those things where we're just going to look at that and say it makes sense for that student to do the practice for the rest of their class. And then when they get to 6th grade, we'll have them, start doing the masks if that's still a thing that we have to do.
Yeah, the other thing is we will not say kids 10 and under are not wearing masks. This will still be something that's encouraged. It just won't be required. So I still picture the little kids in masks as much as possible. Will we force it? No, but just so that's out there, it's not going to be a free-for-all for the younger grades. All right, next question.
All right. How will the snow days pickups be handled? I imagine snow day or rain, like indoor.
Indoor pickup, yeah.
Okay, so that is a big change, and this, I believe, is addressed in the plan. It is. But we're changing our pickup process completely. Students will no longer go outside. Parents will scan a QR code once they come on the property, and then that QR code will be send an alert to their teacher in the classroom, who will then dismiss the child from class to go outside and meet up with the parent. We have the logistics of that all figured out. If you're walking, if you're not walking, if you have siblings, if you don't have siblings, we've got it all figured out. So that will be not a non-issue in the future, and hopefully it's something that we continue. But like I said earlier, it's going to cause delays. Things are going to be slower. So that's just something that we have to think about.
Why would there not be an alignment with Adams 12, especially when families may have students in other Adams 12 schools?
That's why we're considering it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's an important factor. Until they made their decision, though, we really didn't have a way of moving forward with our decision. So yeah, that's definitely something that the board and the team will be looking at.
Yeah.
What date will online start?
That's not known yet for sure.
I can answer this. How will IEPs and ALPs function with online school? Like we did in the spring, IEPs were serviced online via Zoom. So all student minutes were met in small group or individual over Zoom. And then there's a little bit further down a question about testing. So that would apply to students that are either an initial IEP or a reeval that require some sort of testing. What's interesting is right before this whole thing started, I went to a training that was based on moving away from formal testing and working on using the current data to allow students to either exit an IEP or qualify for an IEP. So we're using that data. We're also exploring other options of testing online. There are different programs that allow that, and that's what they do, is do just testing online. Ms. Doherty, I don't know if you want to jump in and add anything specific about ALPs.
Sure. I was responding to another parent about that too. I'm meeting with the teachers of anybody who has a student with an advanced learning plan. As soon as I know that information, I'll meet with the teacher and we'll go over the advanced learning plan with that teacher. And then whoever that teacher is, we'll meet with the parents and the students as far as their advanced learning plan goes. And we'll differentiate for the kiddos in the classroom, whether it's in person or online. We can do that in both situations.
Thank you. And if I didn't answer that correctly, feel free to chat me further questions. How will social distancing be maintained with school drop-off and pickup in a way that keeps school start times intact?
It probably won't. I don't imagine that for the first month or 2 weeks, I can't imagine that school will start on time. But we're going to do our best and see how it goes.
What are the results of the parent survey as to remote or on-site learning?
It's anywhere, it varies per day. It's anywhere from 20% to 30% wanting remote.
I would like to know what the capacity in the building will be now.
I'm not sure I could tell you the specific number, but it'll be less. I couldn't give you, it'll depend on, it would depend on what students decide to do and how we
divide up
divide it up, yeah.
GVAN is reevaluating our plan based on the Adams 12 plan. When will a decision be made? When do parents need to make a decision for in-person versus remote?
Ray, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about that. So, so there's several key things that we've been looking to do in terms of, did I drop off? Can everyone hear me?
You're good.
Okay, great. I just got a little thing that lost it. So the board is really the school board is the kind of the ultimate decision maker on kind of the plan. So what we've been waiting for is obviously our team has been working on putting together the plan, getting the details put together. This meeting is an important one because we wanted to socialize this draft plan and understand your questions, your concerns. Another thing that we wanted to understand is what was Adams 12 going to do. So having said all of that, now we're kind of into that point where we're getting the answers to the things that we've been waiting for. So I expect that staff's going to go back to their desks after this meeting. They're going to read what's happening with Adams 12. The Board of Education is expected to make a decision tonight, and then they'll do a recommendation to us as the board. In all likelihood, we will call a special meeting next week. The board has a regular meeting, but we'll probably call early to mid next week a special meeting to go through the staff's recommendation. We'll go ahead and approve that, and then at that point, that's really the plan. So we're hoping for no later than this time next week. Hopefully, we'll have everything answered. That we'll know what we'll do. We'll know what our start dates are going to be. We'll know whether we're going to go fully remote to begin with, to follow Adams 12 if that's what they decide. And we also will kind of different school districts are saying we're going to go remote until a couple weeks, or we're going to go remote the whole quarter. I don't know if we're going to be able to make that decision, but at least we'll know how we're going to start. So that's what we're committing to. That's what we're committing to our staff. That's what we're committing to our parents. So that's what we're going to do at this point.
Will the kids only get 15 minutes of face-to-face time with their immersion teacher? If so, could that increase?
For remote learning, I presume that, no, 15 minutes a day. No, it would be 30. What we have talked about, sorry. We've done so many plans. GVA virtual is, there are detailed plans for GVA virtual that we sent out. I don't have those plans memorized. I don't remember exactly what the number of the exact minutes that kids are going to be with their immersion teacher, but I believe it's more than 15 minutes a day. But
so the thing about GVA virtual too, something to know about that, GVA Northglenn is one of 3 GVA academies, Global Village Academies, and all 3 schools are working together on that. So, and we also have another group that we work with, it's called the Global Village Academy Collaborative. So those 4 organizations are all involved with building all of that. So while we're hooking into that, we ourselves don't have all the answers necessarily, and that team continues to work on what the virtual offering looks like. So a lot of the questions that you have, we can't answer right now because that team is still working on kind of what that entirely looks like. So more information will come out. I saw a question that came up, and is there a place that we can see more information? Yeah, there's. We've posted some information on the website. As we get more information, we certainly will continue to update, because this is a question that 3 schools are asking in the GVA network. So we want to make sure that we get that information out to everyone as quickly as we can.
And just to go off of that, I'm going to read each question just to make sure we address everybody. And Mr. Sullivan or Ms. Wetzel will direct you to a different place if there's more information in case you don't know where to find it. How are the kids that are doing remote learning going to take the seasonal test?
We would want it to be in person. So that's a good question. We would like to do as much in-person testing for remote students as possible, as much as families will feel comfortable with. So we want to make that happen. Some of it can be done at home, but not all of it.
If a student travels internationally, will they be required to quarantine for 14 days before returning to in-person learning?
That's a good question. I would have to ask Tri-County Health. I'm not sure that we have the ability to, I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm thinking that one through, and I don't know that we've gotten any, there's no guidance that's been given to us. I know a lot of companies themselves have put those types of quarantines in, but we, like I said, we said earlier, we're going to try and follow what our, health department and our, Colorado Department of Education are telling us to do on these things. So we'll follow up on that.
How will the students have prudent distance using a group table? I think you're asking how will they maintain that social distance, and I can kind of go off that. Ms. Bird and I kind of walked through, and we're trying to put desks in the larger classrooms. So students have individualized desks, and then the classrooms that have smaller amounts of students have tables, and we're measuring the tables, making sure they can maintain that social distance. So instead of 4 at a table, there'll probably be 2 diagonal. We answered that. Do we need to get some kind of computer for our child in the event of a quarantine situation?
Not necessarily. We have quite a few resources that we can loan out. So if it's not something that your family can afford or wants to do, then we can help with that.
Curious what the conversations have been around equity and supporting families as a school community. There are a lot of current resources for food, meals, etc. in the wider community, but are there ways we can support families within our community who need various forms of assistance? For example, getting computers to students, aiding families who have to make the choice to leave their job so they can assist their child at home with school, regular reflection spaces for parents who are helping with the school from home.
Yeah, those are great questions. There's been a lot of equity discussions, and there's still a lot of questions about that. As far as a place for parents to kind of sound off and and give feedback, we will always be asking for feedback, regardless of what the model is that is chosen. So we'll just be asking questions. But yes, we are looking into ways that we can help our families. And we have taken some steps to do that. Our social worker spent all of spring, basically, when we were in remote learning, reaching out to at-risk families and making sure they had what they needed.
Sure, and I want to remind everybody too, this school has a fantastic parent-teacher organization. The PTO has been a strong supporter, and they've been really critical in helping us do some of those things for the community. They've organized lots of things, not just to support the school, but to be part of that. So that's an opportunity that I think if you haven't looked at the PTO, they're doing the same thing we're doing. They're meeting remotely, but they've got their mission is changing this year, I think, a little bit too. They're not part of our school, but they're so we don't tell them what to do. They're their own independent organization, but they're a great group to get connected with, and they do great work for our school. And I think that's one of those places that we can go to for that kind of community support that we're looking at.
What is, excuse me, what is the planned method for notifying parents of a quarantine of their class or the school? Mass text and email?
It would probably be phone calls, I would imagine. I think it would be all of the above, as much communication as possible.
Although we will complete at-home temperature checks before heading to school, how will you manage the parent crowds who will wait to ensure the temperature reader approves their student? I anticipate more students will walk students in and not leave until it's confirmed that their student can enter.
So parents will not be allowed in the building. The only people allowed in the building will be staff and students. Parents will have to wait outside, and it will be similar to the pickup and drop off procedures. There will be social distancing stickers that are on the ground, and parents will have to abide by those standards. And if they don't, then I'll call Officer McDaniel.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is, just that's a very valid point. A lot of this is also going to be, the parents, when you come onto our parking lot and you're walking your kids in, if you're leaving your vehicle, do what we ask, do it put your mask on, social distance, make it easier for us to get the kids in, get them checked in. And if we do have, a positive or something like that, we'll work as quickly to figure out whether, that child needs to, we've got several steps before we say that a child has to go home. So we'll work through those before, we have to contact you. But sometimes that might just, need a little bit more patience while we work through that. And one thing to know, the first week or two of school, every year we have a, kind of everybody forgets how drop off and pick off seems to work. Well, this year we've multiplied that by 10. So we've got drop up and pick up, plus we've got to get through everybody safely into the building. So we're just going to ask for a lot of patience, a lot of smiles if you can give that to our staff, because they're working really hard to try and figure this out. And we're, like I said, the team is really good. We've adjusted over the years. We've made changes, improvements in our strategy and all of that stuff. So when we find something that's not working, the team's going to work on it and work to fix it.
How will immersion, exposure, interaction, specifically verbally, happen for virtual learning?
That's another, those details, like Ray said, are still being ironed out, and I couldn't tell you specifically what that's going to look like, but there will be synchronous learning.
Will there be any interaction between K-3 and middle school students and middle school staff?
Not unless they're siblings.
And sorry, it's hard for me to answer questions and then read because I have to scroll. So
Yeah.
Daniela, your question about masks, right now it's 11 and up, so not second grade.
But they're in the common areas, they need masks.
Right.
Yes. How will the standardized testing work that evaluates learning, CMAS and MAPS? We kind of went over that.
Yeah.
How will kindergartners find their classrooms if we can't walk them in?
That's something that we have considered, and we deal with that typically anyway. we try to encourage parents to allow us to walk the kids in. So kindergarten days are very different. And this plan has kind of a rolling start for the kindergartners where they come in and they, in a small group, and meet their teacher before actual school starts, and spend a couple of hours getting to know you things, a couple of initial assessments, and getting to know where their classroom is and where the bathroom is, and all of those things for the kindergartners. So we're really well versed on the first day of kindergarten and what that's like.
Where are you getting the 3-foot distance between students from? According to the CDC guidelines, a safe distance is 6 feet regardless of the setting and activities being performed.
It's on the Colorado Department of Education's website.
Well, so the other thing too is the CDC there was some initial guidance that they gave in the spring that said 6 feet, and they've kind of revised their guidelines at this point. And so they're now saying that 3 feet is the safe distance. And so that's the guidelines we're using. Colorado Department of Health is affirming that as well.
Could information about on-site learning attendance be published somewhere? I would like to make my decision based on how many kids are in each specific cohort. It keeps changing.
What?
So I think that's going to be hard for us to be able to do.
Yeah.
So part of what we have to do, part of the challenge here is making sure that we've got the right staff in the right spot doing the right thing, and not kind of knowing what a parent's decision is in terms of a cohort, or whether they're going to bring their kids into the school or what. It's going to make it difficult. So we're going to ask parents to sit down, think about what's best for their family, and understand how we're going to we're going to construct the program, how we're going to staff it, and what we're going to try and do. And we're going to ask everyone to make a decision. So I don't think that we're going to be in a spot to say, well, this class has 12. So go ahead and bring your kids in. It's just we aren't going to be able to plan that way. We're going to need to have the parents help us, give us some answers so that we can make the right decisions, so we can tell our teachers and our staff the right thing to do.
What provisions technology-wise are being made for remote learning?
We have purchased more Chromebooks and iPads for the little kids. So we're spending money on that and getting those numbers up so that if kids need them, they can have them.
And one of the critical things that we did this year too, if you've looked at the document that we sent out, we're going to be using Google Classroom as a technology platform, and that's it's really a unifying platform. So back in the spring, we had different ways of delivering. We had a YouTube video, and we had a PDF file, and we had all these different things that were being sent potentially by email. So one of our key technology things that we're doing to make that kind of as a one place to go get everything is to use Google Classroom. So all of our GVA academies are using that. Lots of schools are doing it. It's nothing that's new out there. And it's got a lot of great features. So we think it's going to be a very successful thing for us this year in GVA for the remote learning piece.
With the in-person option, will there be physical media sent home with students for homework, or will there be a digital option?
Probably a mixture of both. And I would like to kind of mention that the remote option, we plan to, or I will be pushing for more tangible items that parents can come and pick up for the kids to work on at home, to try to eliminate so much screen time and make it seem, slightly more like a normal school setting. But it will be a mixture, I think, for both remote and for in-person.
What application and tools will remote learning be using?
Those have not been fully decided yet, but other than Google Classroom.
How much flexibility will there be if a parent wants to move to remote or from remote to in-person?
So as the draft states now, we're asking that if parents choose remote, that they stay remote for the semester. If parents choose in-person, they can switch to remote at any time. But the switching back to in-person is where things get a little bit sticky because we have to make sure that we have space in the classroom for students. So that will be a less likely scenario. But if a student is in person and then suddenly, something happens in their family and you decide, no, we want to go remote the rest of the semester, you can do that at the drop of a hat.
Can you discuss what online remote looks like? The chart was a bit confusing.
So I can't discuss too much more about what remote looks like because it's just not done yet.
Yeah, it's still a plan in progress.
Yeah.
How can parents help?
That's a good question. So I have a list of requests from teachers that if we decide to do an in-person option, that teachers would like parents to do. So I plan on sending that out at some point. But, it's things like get your kids practicing wearing masks, talk to them about all the social distancing expectations, let them know that the schools are going to be different, but it's still going to be fun, and try to have a positive attitude with your students. Those were the main themes that teachers kind of gave as things that they would like help with.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate the thing that I mentioned before. Have patience. Understand that we're all working together in a circumstance we didn't plan on, and it's going to take some time. And so, patience and good attitude and willing to work with this is going to go a long way to helping our entire school community.
Can you repeat what Adams 12 is considering?
I answered that privately.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, thank you. I know you covered what percentages want remote.
I answered that one privately too.
Thank you. If we start remote.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
If we start remote, will all students participate in the GVA virtual, or if we start remote, will it be learning with GVA and teachers?
So that's a good question that has not been completely ironed out yet.
Yeah, I think the lean is towards, we want all of our GVA teachers, we don't want them idle, we want them working with their classes. So I think the initial thought is that we will have some sort of structure where we'll try and keep the kids with their classroom teachers. If we go to a online and in person, then we'll make the decision of which teachers are teaching. And we don't know exactly how that might work. Again, that's part of the thing that we have to work out. But I think that might be what we're going to try and do, is just to make sure that our teachers stay connected to our kids through this first few X weeks, however long we might do virtual learning for everyone.
Will we still have half days or planning days?
That all is probably up in the air.
Our teachers still need planning days. Teachers need professional development. So we're going to look to make sure that we, maintain some of that, but I don't know if it's going to be as frequent as we had it in the past year.
What about international travel or travel to hotspots for teachers or staff? Can you implement a required quarantine or testing?
That's something we'll ask Tri-County about, but we cannot legally require that someone be tested, unfortunately, student or staff.
Yeah, and we'll have to look at whether, there's obviously risks in people, various kinds of travel. So we'll just have to look at those guidelines and make some judgment calls on what's the best thing to do. It's one of those things I just don't think we've gotten to in the plan yet, but I know that we'll have to at some point.
How will the supply list be handled? Every student will have their own stuff. Can we pay the fee like last year?
So no, this year we won't be doing a fee. We will be keeping supplies separate. So parents will purchase, if you look at the website, there is a supply list and it has a list of communal supplies. And by communal, I mean, copy paper, Clorox wipes, Kleenex, that type of thing. And then there is a list of individual supplies that the kids will keep in their backpacks or their book or their, pencil bags or whatever. So all their utensils and that type of thing. Does that answer that question? There was a second part to that.
Can they pay the fee? So.
Oh, okay.
You're good. Will there be an option for families in which both parents are essential workers to continue in-person learning in case the plan aligns with Adams 12?
Potentially.
What if you need to pick up your child early? How will that work?
You'll still be able to do it. Probably we'll ask that you call the front desk rather than coming in, but we'll still be able to do all of those things.
Will you have another town hall like this to discuss your revised plan, particularly how to support working full-time parents that also need to meet their students' learning needs, I assume, if we go online?
Yeah, I would think so, yeah. Maybe not a town hall, but more of a parent support session of sorts. We do have some of those in the works, parent trainings on Google Classroom, and those types of things are in the works.
This will be my child's first year and they're in kindergarten. My wife and I work full time. If we decide to do the virtual classroom, how much time do we dedicate to our child to assist her with the schoolwork?
I think it will depend on the kid, unfortunately, but the goal of GVA Virtual is for the kids to be fairly independent. But as a kindergarten parent, you're gonna probably have to log them in, unless they are able to do those types of things. You have to log them in. You may have to open up applications and show them how to use the all of the systems. But the hope is that at some point they will get fairly independent, but it would never be an all day thing, but the number of hours will depend on your kiddo, I think.
Will there be flexibility with the remote option? My son may have to come to work with me if he's home, which means he won't be able to do work until late afternoon or evening.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you have an idea of when the virtual GVA plan will be ready to discuss and have questions and answers about?
What's difficult about all of this is it's kind of a chicken or egg thing. So we're kind of waiting. We need parents to decide. Parents need us to decide in order to decide. So we're trying to work out as many details as we can to provide for parents. But the GVA virtual platform like I said, it's going to depend on the other schools and the participation.
Right, and again, that separate team is really working. We've sort of set a deadline for them to have kind of that plan put together by the middle of August. There's a lot more moving parts to bringing up a brand new virtual program than just continuing our existing program. So there's a little bit more work that needs to be done, but that's what our goal is to have that information out. Not too much longer, but it's probably not as soon as everybody wants, but it's being worked on at this point.
Where and how do I enroll my child in remote learning?
So we will be sending out an actual link for that when that is an appropriate thing to do.
Yeah, well, we will give parents you'll have to let us know what your children are going to do, and we'll have a way of recording that and getting that taken care of, and that'll be an enrollment piece that we'll just have you help us with.
If we are doing remote and the teachers they have are not a GVAN, how will the testing be done in person?
We will facilitate it. Administration will facilitate it on site at the GVAN.
If we are doing GVA virtual, should we purchase the supplies on the supply list?
Probably not. There probably will be another supply list, I would imagine.
Right.
That's a good question.
If middle school is not allowed to use their lockers, are they expected to carry all supplies in a backpack all day, or are they allowed to leave some supplies in a homeroom?
Well, they're only going to be in one room, so they won't be traveling, so they won't have to move anything around. But yes, they'll be able to leave things in their classroom that they stay in all day long. There will be, like I said, the occasional group of middle school students that their cohort will split so that they can go to their language classes. And in that case, I assume that they will take most of their belongings, but they will have a homeroom where all of their things live. So they won't be hauling around backpacks all day long.
And then I know I missed, there was a question about when will 5th graders take the placement for middle school?
For honors, I think I
Um,
need a little bit more specific.
Sorry, let me see if I can find.
We are not requiring the kids to take the placement test at this moment. We are basing the data from the winter map and as well as the teacher recommendations.
Thank you, Chen.
Okay, I think we're at the bottom, and I apologize if I missed anyone's question, and if I did, please rechat it. Will new students be able to tour the school at all?
I think it will depend on what is decided. So I'm not sure of the answer to that because it will depend.
Okay, that's it at the moment.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. I'm just looking through the list as well. I saw one question about if we're waiting outside socially distances, can parents and students stand on the same dot to social distance? And the answer is yes. We're not changing any of the social distancing room. Families are welcome to stand next to each other, unless you've got a middle schooler and that they probably don't want to stand by you. You know how middle schoolers are. But yeah, we're not going to do anything to outside of what the health department is in terms of that.
There's one more question that says, when will we know the final plan, or will there be another draft?
Our hope is, well, it's 2 phases. So our plan for how we open the school and operate the school at the beginning of the school year, our hope is to have that done by this time next week. It might not be as, the board's got to look at the plan that the staff is preparing, but that's our goal. The second piece of that is we still don't have all the details to share with you what GVA virtual will look like. So we're going to have to give you details after that on what that looks like. But I think this is what we're doing planned. This is when school's starting, and this is whether we're going to start in person or whether we're going to do remote only to start. We should have that answer for you by next week.
You know what I didn't think to do was ask Frances if she had any questions from her group. Yeah? You'll have to chat them probably, Frances, because we're not able to hear you since you.
And I have one more while she's doing that. Have you considered a virtual tour for new students and their families?
That's a good idea. I think that's something that we could consider for sure.
Frances, do you have any? Yep.
Okay. Spanish parents have been asking and she's responding verbally. Okay, perfect.
Great. Good.
Thanks, Frances. Hope your brain's not too scrambled from translating for that long on the fly. Anything else? Any last minute comments, questions? I want to really thank the parents for being as patient as they have been, and also the staff, and also the parents and staff that were in the return to school committees. Those are long, arduous meetings where we argue, and they're not typically really fun. So thank you for spending your spare time helping us out to make GVA as safe as possible. And we'll keep you guys updated. Thanks so much. Have a great evening.
Thanks a lot, everyone.